In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Beneficent. Now the main headlines. Grand Ayatollah Shirazi obliges the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, to revive the sacred Fatimid rituals. Shia Waves news agency monitors active religious activities around the world to teach children the principles of Islam. World urged to help Afghanistan deal with worst ever food crisis. Shia organizations call on all Muslims to provide relief to the families affected by Pakistan's torrential rains. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is Ayub Nouinou and you are watching Shia Waves live from Imam Hussein TV free. The Supreme Religious Authority, Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Hussein al-Shirazi, stressed the necessity of reviving the Fatimid rituals on the occasion of the martyrdom anniversary of Fatima Zahara, peace be upon her. This came during the scientific session followed by Shia Waves that is held in the Grand Ayatollah's Honourable House in Qom. The Grand Ayatollah Shirazi said, "The sacred Fatimid rituals are among the rituals of God Almighty that must be revived, especially during these painful days of the martyrdom anniversary of Fatima Zahara, peace be upon her." At the same time, His Eminence expressed his great sorrow and condolences over the sorrowful Fatimid anniversary, stressing that all of the believers in various parts of the world should revive the Fatimid commemoration. The Grand Ayatollah Shirazi recalled the martyrdom of the Prophet's daughter, peace be upon her, with great pain, stating that enemies of Allah aborted her unborn child Al-Muhsin, peace be upon him, and then killed her. He pointed out that these oppressors committed this crime against Lady Zahara, peace be upon her, as a result of her integrity in the path of God, in joining good and forbidding evil, and her righteousness in moving away from the oppressors who claim their affiliation with Islam. Today, Shia Waves News Agency monitored a remarkable educational activity for a number of Islamic schools and educational centers around the world to teach young children the principles of Islam. Firstly, in Japan, the first online school to teach children the great principles of Islam in the Japanese language was recently launched, aimed at instilling Islamic culture in the hearts of young people. The school administration stated that Muslim families in Japan can now teach their children lessons about true Islam via the internet and through special curricula prepared for this purpose. In the US city of Chicago, meanwhile, the Mecca Islamic Center launched its theatrical activity, Street Theater, to teach children Islamic morals through theatrical plays. Whilst in Britain, educational centers and schools affiliated with the Shia of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, continue to hold Quranic sessions for children, which are joined by Muslims from both the Sunni and Shia schools of thought, as an encouragement for them to spread the great Quranic culture and the principles of the Prophet's progeny, peace be upon them. The Islamic Center in the Ukrainian city of Lviv also announced the provision of free lessons for children to teach them the principles of the Islamic religion. Whilst in the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, several Islamic schools honored their young students who had learned to perform the prayers correctly to encourage them to commit the mandatory prayers. Experts blamed poor Taliban governance and international policies for the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, where more than 90% of the households go hungry, says a report published on Monday. The United Nations World Food Programme has already described this as the worst humanitarian crisis on earth, while the international community still ponders how to help Afghans without benefiting the Taliban. International donor assistance was reduced to tackle when the Taliban seized power last year, and cut-offs were economically devastating, says another report published by the Foreign Policy magazine. But the Taliban regime Two, shares the blame as it has more capacity to provide relief than it lets on. It is generating revenue, especially through border trade, but it blames the crisis on Western sanctions. The report also added. In its latest report that sums up the food situation in Afghanistan till the end of November 2022, the WFP said it's now raising supplies to help more than 22 million people who are forced to take desperate measures to get enough money to eat. WFP's Executive Director, David Beasley, told BBC in a recent interview that the situation is as bad as you can possibly imagine. In fact, we're now looking at the worst humanitarian crisis on earth. Other experts, meanwhile, are predicting that if the weather is as poor as predicted this winter, millions of people, including children, are likely to face acute hunger and widespread famine. Preliminary estimates collected by WFP show that 4.7 million children, pregnant and lactating women are at risk of acute malnutrition in 2022, and 3.9 million children are acutely malnourished. All 34 provinces are facing crisis or emergency levels of acute food insecurity. In November, WFP assisted 3.5 million people so far with emergency food, nutrition and livelihood support. Distributions are ongoing to reach 15 million beneficiaries this month. Joining us live from Southampton, which is in the south coast of England, is Habib Ahmadi. Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Ahmadi. Inshallah, everything is okay with you. Firstly, considering the dominance... Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Nice for you to join us, inshallah, today. Considering the dominance of Taliban, how and based on what mechanism can we ensure that this aid reaches the people of Afghanistan?
Thanks for having me. It's very unfortunate that we are talking about the hunger and poverty of Afghanistan. When we talk about the hunger and poverty, yes, it is all 34 provinces of Afghanistan, but some places worse than others, especially we got the mountain areas, which is purely the Shia area, like Daikundis province, Bamyan province, Ghazni province, some part of Uruzgan, and some part of Saripul, and you have Samangan province, which is purely mountain area. It's getting much harder for them because the route to that area is very likely getting blocked by snows and by the rains. But there is no clear mechanism. I mean, last year we had experienced some aids went to Afghanistan. The Taliban did supply some parts, some communities, but we had the news in Maidan Wardak, Behzud province, which is purely the Shia Hazaras living there. The Taliban official in that area bring the aids back for their own family instead of helping the poor people. So that's very unfortunate. The Taliban have no plan for the helping communities or getting aids from or the international community to provide the people who actually need it. Taliban do not see the Afghanistan, all community as a equal citizen. For them, they are only helping, selective helping, selective communities, which is get some support, but not all the communities. For that reason, for that particular reason, we don't have a plan. For the Taliban do not have a plan. Two, because they're not been recognized by international community. They have no good relationship with a lot of the international communities, and then you have the Taliban, the discrimination the Taliban have for the Afghanistan citizens, and obviously the scaremongering by the Taliban, which is and the lack of the security is most of part of the Afghanistan. A lot of people who have money, who had money, actually fled Afghanistan. So Taliban are directly involved. International community are the only hope they can pressurize the Taliban. for providing the clear route and gave a plan that how we can reach the poor communities, especially the mountain areas.
With all of the devastating circumstances Afghanistan is currently going through since the Taliban seized power last year, why are the international community not seriously interacting with the deterioration that the country is currently facing?
Well, unfortunately, the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a failure. And also we have the Ukraine war, and as well as you can see the problem the Europe and the West facing for themselves. You see the inflation, the food prices. This kind of the food crisis because of the war in Ukraine is got worse and a lot of different parts of the world. Especially Afghanistan has been forgotten. Afghanistani communities abroad, which is we have the Afghanistani diaspora, I think they are not very active to communicate with the international community and ask for help and ask for the aids to go to Afghanistan. Well, for the US, which is the US is responsible directly, been responsible for last 20 years, and the way they withdraw it, the way they brought back Taliban to the power, unfortunately, they need to wake up before something very bad happens. Before this crisis, end up killing many, I mean, you're talking thousands of innocent children in Afghanistan. The international community have responsibility. They must act together. No matter what's going on in Ukraine, because of the war in the last 20 years or beforehand or now, the international community been in Afghanistan and they've been involved in Afghanistan. I mean, somehow some of the crisis been created through proxies. Some of the trouble created by international community through proxies. So they must get together. They must act now before it get too late. I mean, yes, there is no actually excuse. Afghanistan is not massive, in terms of population, 34 millions. I mean, there's a lot of people, we're talking about 5-6 million people. Fleet, we're talking about 29-30 million. 29-30 million, especially, is not all 90, as you said in your report, is 90% of the countries. We're talking about 25 million needs. They have to do something. They have to come up with some plan. But again, we have to make sure these aids do not go in the hand of Taliban. But with the help of community leaders in Kabul, they will give the aid to the people, to the community leaders, and monitor it, make sure this aids reach the poor areas. And it got to be happening before the winters, before it gets really cold, before the snow comes. If the snow comes, it's going to be really, really hard to provide the aids to the poor communities in Afghanistan.
Mr. Ahmadi, thank you for your insights. Thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Habib Ahmadi joining us live from Southampton in the south coast of England. Let us remind our respected viewers of today's headlines. Grand Ayatollah Shirazi obliges the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, to revive the sacred Fatimid rituals. Shia Waves news agency monitors active religious activities around the world to teach children the principles of Islam. The world is urged to help Afghanistan deal with its worst ever food crisis. Also tonight, new research details find Xinjiang-based suppliers linked to forced labor. Today, Wednesday, several Shia organizations from around the world called for emergency support for Muslim families in Pakistan affected by torrential rains and floods that struck large areas of the country. A joint statement issued by these organizations, followed by Shia Waves news agency, said all Muslims, especially the followers of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, should help their brothers in Pakistan, especially in such difficult days of the cold winter. The statement added that the flood emergency in Pakistan requires us, as Muslims, followers and loyalists of the pure Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, to provide relief to the affected families as much as we can. The statement pointed out that the floods have so far left 500,000 displaced people, 100,000 damaged homes, and nearly 2 million dead and wounded, stressing that these statistics are increasing due to the great damage inflicted on Pakistani families. The Misbah al-Hussein Foundation for Relief and Development, affiliated with the Office of the Supreme Religious Authority, Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Hussein al-Shirazi, had announced a few days ago that it had sent aid for the relief of Shia families in the city of Quetta in cooperation with the Imam Hussein charity. And now we continue with some short news. The international non-violence organization Free Muslim condemned the terrorist crime that targeted worshippers in Maigajimi, Nigerian state of Katsina, calling on the authorities to shoulder their responsibilities in protecting civilians. The organization stated in a statement, of which the Shia Waves news agency received a copy, that more than 12 worshippers were killed and others were kidnapped, whose fate is still unknown, when an armed terrorist group targeted the Maigamji Mosque in a crime that is not the first of its kind in the state. It explained that mosques and schools in the Muslim majority northern regions are constantly exposed to terrorist acts amid deliberate negligence by the federal and local authorities in Nigeria, noting that this matter raises concern and disapproval of this policy. The organization considered that administrative and financial corruption and racist and sectarian policies practiced by the authorities contribute effectively to the growth and activity of terrorist groups and armed gangs, calling on the international community to review their international positions towards the Nigerian authorities in a comprehensive manner. The Indonesian capital, Jakarta, witnessed the launch of the 4th edition of the Holy Quran Memorization Competition. The official of the International Quranic Preaching Center of Imam Hussein Holy Shrine in Jakarta, the Indian branch, Sheikh Dr. Abdullah Baik, said the activities of the Holy Quran Memorization Competition will start in its 4th session, which was held at the branch's headquarters in the capital, Jakarta. For a prominent official presence, led by the district head and a group of officials as well as a number of the participants' families, Baik added. The mechanism for participating in the competition included the physical aspect as well as online participation from those representing all branches of the central branch, as the event witnessed the participation of 200 male and female contestants between the ages of 5 to 25 years. He continued, on the sidelines of the competition, various activities were held, the most prominent of which was the lecture of Sayyid Hassan al-Aidarus, who emphasized on adhering to the two treasures, the Holy Quran and the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. Foundations and centers affiliated to the Shirazi Religious Authority in Iraq and the world have held mourning ceremonies to commemorate the martyrdom anniversary of Lady Fatima Zahara, peace be upon her. The Shirazi affiliated Fatimid committee in the holy city of Qom gave lectures and held mourning ceremonies to commemorate the second Fatimid days, the memory of the martyrdom of Lady Zahara, peace be upon her, according to the second narration of 75 days. It is worth mentioning that the Supreme Religious Authority, His Eminence Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sadiq al-Hussein al-Shirazi, obligated the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, to commemorate the tragic Fatimid days, as we reported at the top of today's news program. Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Ali al-Hussein al-Sistani received today, Wednesday, in his house in Holy Najaf, the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, who is tasked with putting a plan on the protection of religious sites and the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Iraq, Gianine Hennis Plascha. During the meeting, the religious authority stressed the importance of concerted efforts in promoting a culture of peaceful coexistence, renouncing violence and hatred, and establishing the values of harmony based on maintaining rights and mutual respect among adherents of different religions and intellectual orientations. Ayatollah Sistani also highlighted the tragedies suffered by many peoples and ethnic and social groups in many parts of the world as a result of the intellectual and religious persecution practiced against them, the suppression of basic freedoms, and the absence of social justice. Demonstrations have been taking place across the world over the large-scale repression of the Uyghur Muslim population living in Xinjiang by the Chinese government, amounting to crimes against humanity. Recently, on December the 3rd, a few activists gathered in Tokyo, Japan, to show support for and silently highlight the suffering of the Uyghur people of Xinjiang in China. The activists also paid homage to more than 24 Uyghurs who were killed in an apparent block fire in Xinjiang's capital, Urumqi, as reported on Shia Waves last week, according to several media reports also. The protesters pointed out to possibly how China's zero COVID and anti-ethnic policies, both exceptionally strict and oppressive, had combined to even further terrorize the Uyghur minority in the northwestern region of China, local media reported. A new report finds evidence that many Xinjiang-based suppliers are implicated in government forced labour programs and details links to major car manufacturers. More details in the following report.
The new research by Sheffield Hallam University's Helena Kennedy Center for International Justice and Nomagaya, a non-governmental organization, details Xinjiang's role in the production of metals critical to auto manufacturing, including aluminium, steel, and copper, as well as the region's manufacturing of batteries, tires, and other car parts. The report finds evidence that many Xinjiang-based suppliers are implicated in government-forced labor programs and details links to major car makers. The author wrote to the car companies and supplier referenced in the report, and as of December 6th, they have received replies from 13 companies, either denying links to Xinjiang or promising to investigate further. Since 2017, Chinese authorities in Xinjiang have detained an estimated 1 million Uyghurs and Turkic Muslims. Detainees and prisoners are subjugated to torture and other ill treatment, cultural and political indoctrination, and forced labor, according to reports. In August 2022, a report by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights found that the abuses in Xinjiang may amount to crimes against humanity. This June, the United States Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act took effect, establishing a presumption that goods made in whole or in part in Xinjiang or produced by entities in China linked to forced labor are not eligible to be imported into the United States. The European Union in September 2022 proposed a law that would prohibit the import of goods and products made with forced labor. The Human Rights Watch in 2021 co-published a report describing aluminium sourcing as a blind spot for the car industry and calling for increased efforts to map aluminium supply and address related human rights abuses. This latest report makes clear that car makers should accelerate efforts to trace their supply chains and enhance their oversight of suppliers. Failing to do so means they risk selling vehicles tainted with forced labor.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has slammed multinational corporations for turning the world's ecosystems into playthings of profit and warned failure to correct course would lead to catastrophic results. With our bottomless appetite for unchecked and unequal economic growth, humanity has become a weapon of mass extinction, he said at the ceremonial opening of talks on biodiversity in Montreal, Quebec, Canada on Tuesday. Nearly 200 countries have gathered for the December 7th to 19th UN Biodiversity Conference, the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, otherwise known as COP15, to the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD. The conference will aim for the adoption of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, a global roadmap for the conservation, protection, restoration and sustainable management of biodiversity and ecosystems for the next decade. 1 million species are at risk of extinction. 1/3 of all land is severely degraded and fertile soil is being lost, while pollution and climate change are accelerating the degradation of the oceans, according to reports. We are treating nature like a toilet, Guterres said, and ultimately we are committing suicide by proxy, with the effects felt on jobs, hunger, disease and death. Negotiators hope that the 2-week UN summit yields a deal that ensures there is more nature, animals, plants and healthy ecosystems in 2030 than what exists now. But how that progress is pursued and measured will need to be agreed upon by all 196 government signatories of the CBD. Construction works are ongoing on the project of Imam Sahib al-Zaman courtyard at Al-Kadhimain Holy Shrine, which is located on the western side of the Holy Shrine as part of a series of projects for the expansion and development of the courtyards. The Director of the Engineering Affairs Department, Nadia Fuad Al-Aqsam, said in a statement followed by Shia Waves news agency, "This project has been initiated in an effort to secure new worship spaces equipped with the best services in order to accommodate a large number of honourable pilgrims coming to the Holy Shrine. The new courtyard will be 660 meters long and covered with marble, with Islamic inscriptions and decorations." She explained that the courtyard of the Imam Sahib al-Zaman, may Allah hasten his reappearance, will be equipped with all the services needed by the honourable pilgrim, such as drinking water fountains, ablution places, restrooms for men and women, resting places and places for baggage and mobile services, baby strollers and wheelchairs for the disabled. The total area of the project is 15,000 square meters and nearly 45% of the project area has been completed. We have reached the end of today's Shia Wave show. Let's remind our viewers of today's headlines. Grand Ayatollah Shirazi obliges the Shias of Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them, to revive the sacred Fatimid rituals. Shia Waves news agency monitors active religious activities around the world to teach children the principles of the religion of Islam. The world is being urged to help Afghanistan deal with worst ever food crisis. Shia organizations call on all Muslims to provide relief to the families affected by Pakistan's torrential rains. New research details find that Xinjiang-based suppliers are linked to forced labor. Humanity has become a weapon of mass extinction, UN says. And finally tonight, construction works continue on the project of Imam Sahib al-Zaman courtyard at Al-Kadhimain Holy Shrine in Baghdad. You can view the latest news on Shia Waves website, and you can send news of your city or country to be published on our news agency. Please contact us on the numbers at the bottom of the screen. This is the end of today's news. Thank you all for watching. We pray to Allah Almighty to hasten the reappearance of the Master of our time, and we continue to wish all of you condolences on the commemoration of Sayyidah Fatima Zahara on this second commemoration period of 75 days. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.